The Battle of Clontarf. Good Friday 'twas 1,000 years ago, a few miles outside Dublin, where the plain meets Dublin Bay. The sandy shore lies low, a place still called Clontarf, where now the train brings workers to the city in the rain. But then 'twas open country, and a force of Irish came the Dublin walls to gain, for Brian Boru, who marched with foot and horse, 'gainst Sitrick Silkenbeard, the king of Dublin's Norse. The causes of the quarrel are soon told. Brian was high king, all Ireland lived beneath his rod of wern. At last within his fold he gathered Malachy and grassy Meath. But now the Danes of Dublin gan to seethe with anger against the loss of their old sway. Sitrick, their king, looked round for room to breathe, allied himself with Leinster chiefs at bay, and sent for help to brother Norse beyond the say. Brian heard the rebel talk and massed his host of warlike Gaels, but also many a Dane. For though the king relied on Gaels the most, he'd learned the warrior Norse not to disdain. Sitrick had friends across the Irish main, that came from Scotland and Doyle-man. The armies both encamped out on the plain. To fight upon Good Friday was the plan, though that day Christians scrupled to be in the van. Dark omens filled the coming day and night. A Dane in Scotland saw what chilled his heart. 12 wild Valkyries wove the web of fight upon their loom, then tore the web apart. Them goddesses choose by their fatal art which warriors will die amid the fray. The night before the battle, sleepers start from beds in Dublin as a pale horse grey wakes with his ghostly hoofbeats, terror and dismay. The goddess Evil loved a man of might. She promised him long life in Ireland, if on the day he'd stay out of the fight. He shook his head and told her what he'd planned. I gave me word to Brian's son I'd stand with him tomorrow where the hosts will vie for victory. I'll not hold back me hand. Evil was wroth and said, then you must die, and many Irish with you on the field will lie. Good Friday dawned, and when the fight began, them visions and omens proved to be all true. The finest men fell fighting in the van, and neither Norse nor Irish could break through. But in the evening Gaeldom stronger grew, and pushed the Norsemen back into the say. But Brian, who the sword no longer drew, he was so old, had knelt him down to pray, when he was killed by Norsemen fleeing from the fray. Never more fearful sacrifice of blood than that day when Christ died all men to save. Turlough fell wounded and drowned in the flood. He was Brian's grandson and a youth most brave. And many's the Norseman found a watery grave, trying to flee back to their ships again. The gore of warriors stains the incoming wave, the wounded sink to breathe their last, and then crows, kites and vultures feast on dead and dying men. As chained Prometheus at the well of Jove watched helpless as the eagle ate his gut, the men whose fate the dread Valkyries wove watched fainting as the crows and vultures put their gaze upon them, ready for the glut, each marking out who's dead or still alive but wounded, so attacks they can't rebut. The slash at bleeding bodies is the dive, but first of all, to stab their eyes out the contrive. The Irish thought these birds, called Baibh na Meán, were goddesses of battle, like the Norse Valkyries, who just laid their fates upon the men that wished to die without remorse. The battle done, the remnant of each force marched from Clontarf and into Munster crossed, or set from Dublin Bay their salt sea course. No victors here or there, all warriors lost, and if men glory now, they think not of the cost.